Welcome to the channel. I appreciate y'all for tapping in. It's Big Lamar, not the little one. I'm going to react to the war between two of Mexico's most relevant cartels, El Mencho's CJNG cartel and El Chopo's Sinaloa cartel. These two cartels are standing on business. This is going to be serious. Go ahead, like this video, share this video, and subscribe to the channel. And get down in them comments and let me know what you think. And do me a favor and hype this video up. Let's get into it.
Most powerful criminal organizations in the world are tearing Mexico apart in a war so brutal it makes Game of Thrones look like a children's show. I'm talking about the Sinaloa Cartel versus the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, known as CJNG. Sometimes we think cartel wars are just about drugs, but this conflict has evolved into something way more sinister. We're talking drone warfare learned from Ukraine, mass executions filmed and posted online, and a civil war within the Sinaloa cartel.
Man, talk about standing on business. So you mean to tell me that these cartels are actually using drones to target their enemies? Man, this is gonna get deep. Make sure y'all get down in them comments and let me know what y'all think.
It's left over 2,000 people dead in just 6 months. And here's the crazy part that's going to blow your mind. El Mencho, the leader of CJNG, has become El Chapo's son's absolute worst nightmare. And he's doing it by being smarter than everyone else in the game. In this video, we're going to break down how a cartel that used to work for Sinaloa became their biggest enemy. How El Chapo's own sons turned on each other in the most brutal way possible, and why El Mencho might be the smartest criminal mastermind alive. We'll cover the drone attacks that look like something out of a war movie.
So, these two cartels actually work with each other. El Mencho used to work for El Chapo. Somewhere down the line, things went wrong, and that created a big bloody war between El Chapo and El Mencho's cartels. This is deep. This is deep. This is gonna be big right here.
Mass graves with hundreds of bodies, the $15 million bounty that makes El Mencho more wanted than most terrorists, and how this war is literally reshaping the entire drug trade from Mexico to your neighborhood.
They had a $15 million bounty on El Mencho. Let me know down in them comments if you would have went after El Mencho for them 15 M's. I mean, hey man, 15 M's is a lot. I know a lot of people probably would try to collect on that.
If you think you know about cartel violence, trust me, you ain't seen nothing yet. This story has more twists than a Netflix series, more betrayals than a soap opera, and more violence than any movie Hollywood would dare to make. Let's dive into the deadly...
Woo! Man, hype this video up, man. Just from the beginning, you can already tell that this is gonna be some hot-ish. Hype this video up, man.
War Mexico has ever seen, and by the end of this video you'll understand why this conflict is about to change everything. To understand this war, we got to go back to 2010, because this whole mess started with one of the biggest betrayals in cartel history. But first, let me paint you a picture of how twisted this relationship really was. Picture this scenario. CJNG wasn't always Sinaloa's enemy. In fact, they
CJNG, man, them boys look hella serious. Look at them, man. Them boys look like they ready for war. This is gonna be epic.
Used to be their muscle, their enforcers, their attack dogs. CJNG started as the armed wing of the Sinaloa cartel called Mata Zetas, which literally means Zetas killers. Their whole job was to protect Sinaloa's interests and fight Los Zetas, who were terrorizing Mexico at the time with levels of violence that made international headlines. But here's where things get spicy, and I mean really spicy. El Mencho, whose real name is Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, wasn't just some random guy who decided to start a cartel. This dude had connections that ran deep. He was connected to the Mencho Cartel, which was a major player in the drug game before it collapsed. When that organization started falling apart, El Mencho suspected that Sinaloa had sold out his original bosses to the authorities or rival cartels. Now imagine you're working for someone, putting your life on the line every day, and then you find out they might have betrayed the people who gave you your start in this business. That's exactly what happened to El Mencho.
El Mencho was not having that, man. All that backstabbing and betrayal, he wasn't with that. And he was ready to stand on business. Actually, he did stand on business.
When the Mencho Cartel collapsed, El Mencho basically said, "F Sinaloa, we're doing our own thing." But it wasn't just anger. It was calculated rage mixed with ambition. So in 2010, CJNG split off and went independent. But get this,
Did y'all see the gun that boy had? Army guns for sure, man. You telling me these dudes are working with drones and big guns like that? Oh, man. I wouldn't want to see that.
relationship was so complicated that by 2011, they actually got back together with Sinaloa to fight Los Zetas. It was like a toxic relationship where they kept breaking up and getting back together, except instead of arguing about who left dishes in the sink, they were arguing about who controlled billion-dollar drug routes. This temporary alliance against Los Zetas was purely business. Both organizations realized that Los Zetas were becoming too powerful and too brutal. Even by cartel standards, Los Zetas were kidnapping, extorting, and killing civilians on a scale that was bringing too much heat from the government. So Sinaloa and CJNG put their differences aside temporarily to deal with the common threat. But by 2014, CJNG officially declared independence and started fighting Sinaloa for control of Mexico. This wasn't just some small-time beef between neighborhood gangs. We're talking about two.
They was like, look, we gonna come together. We gonna knock these dudes out the picture, and then we gonna get back to it, cause it's still on. But let's just wipe these dudes out and get them out our way. That was pretty smart. That was a good strategy, if you ask me.
Two organizations that would eventually control billions of dollars in drug revenue, thousands of armed fighters, and territory spanning multiple countries. El Mencho was about to prove he was way smarter than anyone gave him credit for, and he was about to turn the entire cartel landscape upside down. The split wasn't just about money or territory, it was personal. El Mencho felt disrespected, betrayed, and underestimated. He was tired of being someone else's muscle and wanted to build his own empire. What nobody realized at the time was that this decision would eventually lead to the most violent cartel war in Mexican history. Now let me break down where these cartels are literally at war right now, because this isn't happening in some remote jungle that nobody cares about. This is happening in major cities where regular people live, work, and try to raise their families. The violence is so intense that entire neighborhoods have been abandoned, and the Mexican military has to escort ambulances.
Yeah, them boys were definitely serious, and for them to terrorize whole cities and neighborhoods, that's crazy, man. And that just lets you know how out of control things in Mexico are, man, between these cartels, because they don't care about nothing or nobody. All they want is money, power, and respect. They're trying to take over all the territories that they can to make as much money as they can. And they are not letting anybody get in the way. No policia, no military, nothing. Them boys are wild.
And fire trucks. First up is Tijuana, and this place is absolutely crucial to understanding why this war is so intense. This is the #1 border crossing for drugs into California, and I'm not talking about small amounts. We're talking about tons of fentanyl, cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine crossing this border every single day. Whoever controls Tijuana controls billions in drug revenue. And right now, it's a complete bloodbath. Violence is up.
Get down in them comments and let me know this. Would you join the cartel? Would you get down with them? Make some of that money? Get down in them comments and let me know.
16% between July 2024 and March 2025. And it's not just CJNG versus Sinaloa. It's a three-way war with the original Tijuana cartel trying to reclaim their city. The Tijuana cartel used to run this place back in the day, but they got weakened by arrests and internal conflicts. Now they're trying to make a comeback while CJNG and Sinaloa fight each other. There are constant shootouts in the northern districts near the U.S. border, and I mean constant.
That seems to be the strategy of these cartels. You got one cartel over here waiting to get back in the game. So he's going to say, let's just kick back and let those two fight it out and kill each other off, and then we back on. That seems to be the strategy that these cartels use. I would say it's kind of smart, let them wipe each other out, and then we take over and get this money. Makes sense to me.
We're talking about gun battles that last for hours ago.
Man, them boys is working with slabs. Man, just one of them bricks that they just pulled out of that trunk. Could you imagine how much money that is worth? Man, it's crazy. They work.
Attack us.
Man, look at the type of weaponry these boys be walking around with. That's wild. Them boys got bigger guns than the Army got damn near. I'm sure they probably got the same guns that the Army has. And I'm talking about the United States Army. They probably got bigger and better guns than the Mexican Army got.
For residents.
Man, between the big guns, the drones, and the armored trucks that these cartels are working with, how could you stop them? It seems like they probably only people that can stop them is them when they go against each other, because they got too much weaponry, man. Them boys are way more advanced than I'm sure a lot of us realize. Armored trucks, drones, and big army guns. That's wild. Yeah, the violence is probably low because of that, and because when you got all that war going on, it's messing up the money. So I'm sure they're probably trying to be more focused on business, getting those drugs across borders and everywhere that they need to go so they can get paid. Ain't nobody got time to be fighting all day and not getting paid. That don't make sense. I'm wondering if all this information is out there, why can't they get more control over it? This guy right here is telling us exactly how all this stuff gets to where it needs to be. And you trying to tell me that the United States can't do a better job of getting it under control? It's all a money play. And the United States most likely is getting paid. I'm not even going to say most likely. The United States is getting paid off of all this drug smuggling and human trafficking as well. They just want to, stay low key with it. They're trying to stay in the background and not be seen. But they got their hands involved in all this as well. Because there's no way in the world with all this information on how this stuff comes and goes is out there that they're not getting it under control. They don't want to. And that's why we have the big problem in America with drugs that we have now.
Whoever owns the port
Man, look at all that right there, man. That's crazy. That's enough to supply probably the whole west coast of the United States for, man, it looked like a few years worth of work right there, man. That's crazy. Them boys got all the work.
Goose
You can't trust nobody in that game. You can't even trust your best friend's kids. They might backdoor you just for power and control and to get more money. And from what I see, all that work that they got over there, it's enough money for everybody in the cartels to be straight. But greed is real. And it sounds like El Chapo's son might have got a little greedy. Let's check it out and find out. And those were not pesos. Those were American dollars. Hundreds and fifties. Hundreds and fifties.
Then everything went wrong. These armed men entered through a removed window, grabbed El Mayo, put a bag over his head, zip-tied his hands behind his back, gave him sedatives to keep him quiet, and flew him to a private airfield.
Dirty. That was dirty. Told him, hey man, let's go check out this real estate. I might want to do a deal with you on some property. Got him to the spot, put a pillowcase over his head, gave him some drugs to keep him calm and quiet, and turned him over to the officials. That's crazy work right there, man. But like I always say, man, it's dirty. It's a cold game. And, man, you gotta be careful, man. You gotta keep your head on the swivel, man. You know what I'm saying? Pay attention to your surroundings and don't trust anybody when you're in that game.
In El Paso, Texas, U.S. authorities were waiting on the tarmac like they knew exactly when the plane would arrive. Both El
Wait. So for him to be able to snatch El Mayo up like that and just hand him over to the officials over in the United States, that lets you know that the United States are working hand in hand with these cartels. They're making deals with these guys, to let them continue to operate and get their products over here into the United States. Man, it's a dirty game, man. It's a cold game. But in that life, I guess it's fair.
Sinaloa Cartel officials
Yeah, expose how deep the corruption goes in the Mexican government, but it also exposes how deep the corruption goes with the United States government as well. It's crazy, man.
about his father's kidnapping. This wasn't just business anymore. This was personal revenge. The first day of this civil war was like something out of a movie, except it was real life and real people were dying. Mayito Flaco authorized coordinated attacks against Los Chapitos across multiple cities. A Mexican army convoy got ambushed in La Campiña neighborhood, which is Chapitos territory, and one sergeant was killed. This wasn't just cartel-on-cartel violence. They were attacking government forces too. Fighting broke out across Culiacan, which is Sinaloa's capital and the heart of cartel power in Mexico. The violence then spread to Badiraguato, which is El Chapo's hometown, Navolato, Costa Rica, and other areas throughout Sinaloa state.
The crazy thing about this right here, that I'm realizing as he names these different places over in Mexico, I actually know people from some of these places. It's wild, man. And I don't blame any of them people that I know over here in the United States that's from some of them places for leaving there, because it sounds pretty damn wild over there. I don't blame them. People trying to escape the violence over there in Mexico and they try to come over here to the United States, or they come over here to the United States. Can you really blame them when they got to live like that? I can't. If I was over there, man, I would try to get out of there by any means necessary. I don't care if I did have to sneak across a border or something. As long as I know that I can be safe and my family can be safe, I'm going to do what I got to do, man. So shout out to all those people that escaped that violence and tried to come over here, or they came over here for a better life. Shout out to y'all, man. I don't blame y'all for doing what y'all had to do, man.
Residents were trapped in their homes as gun battles raged in the streets. The violence was so intense that the Mexican government had to deploy additional military forces to try to restore order. Schools were closed, businesses shut down, and the airport was temporarily closed due to security concerns. This wasn't just a cartel war. It was a breakdown of civil order in an entire Mexican state. From September 2024 to March 2025, over 2,000 people have been killed in Sinaloa State alone from this
Man, that's a lot of bodies dropping. 2,000? 2,000 people lost their lives in just the span of a year. Was that a whole year? That's crazy, man. The violence is out of control with these cartels over there. They don't care if you're a civilian. They don't care if you're military. They don't care if you're the policias or any kind of government official. They gonna get you out the way if they need to. And sometimes they don't even need to get you out of the way for any reason. They just gonna wipe you out just because. That's just what they do. You know, they gotta keep their reputation up as being ruthless.
war. 2,000 people, gang. That's not a war. That's a massacre. And these aren't just cartel members dying. Innocent civilians, police officers, soldiers, and anyone who gets caught in the crossfire is at risk. The violence between the two Sinaloa factions has been particularly brutal because both sides know each other's tactics, safe houses, and weaknesses. Former allies became enemies overnight, and the betrayal made the violence even more personal and vicious.
Money will do that. Money will turn friends into enemies. And some of these cartels were somewhat friends. But the money turned them into enemies, man. And things got hella bloody. And this is still going on right now to this day. That's crazy.
Factions started using increasingly extreme tactics to send messages to each other. Bodies were left in public places with messages attached. Safe houses were attacked with military-style raids. Family members of rival faction leaders became targets. The rules that had previously governed cartel conflicts were thrown out the window. The psychological impact on the population has been devastating. People who had lived through previous cartel wars said this one felt different, more personal, more vicious, and more unpredictable. When cartels fight each other, there are usually some unwritten rules about avoiding certain targets or areas. But in a civil war, those rules don't apply. Now here's where El Mencho proves he's a genius tactician and why he's become El Chapo's son's worst nightmare.
That is something that I learned just going over to Mexico all the times. I've been over there a lot of times. And one thing that I did learn is that even though there's some fighting going on between cartels and stuff like that, they keep the violence in certain areas and they keep it away from certain areas, like the tourist areas, the resorts and stuff like that. They'll keep it away from that. But if you just go down the street to the neighborhoods or somewhere around there, it's going down. Please believe. You inside that resort, everything seems cool, calm, and collective. It's all love. You step outside that resort and shit gets real. Please believe that.
While everyone else was focused on the immediate violence and chaos, El Mencho was playing a completely different game. A long-term strategy that's absolutely brilliant in its simplicity and ruthlessness. Los Chapitos were getting their asses kicked by La Maisa. They were losing territory, losing men, and losing money at an unsustainable rate. They were desperate and did something that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. They reached out to CJNG, their former enemies, and asked for help. Their former enemies became their lifeline in a moment of desperation. And El Mencho, he said yes. But here's the catch, and this is where his genius really shows. He's not going all in. He's not committing his entire organization to help Los Chapitos win their civil war. Instead, he's playing both sides like a chess master who can see 20 moves ahead. In June 2025, photos surfaced that shocked the cartel world. CJNG and Chapitos members were posing together in front of the Letras monument in Cacalotan, Sinaloa. These are the same people who had been trying to kill each other for years, now posing for photos like they're best friends. The next day, graffiti appeared showing IAG, which stands for Ivan Archivaldo Guzman, El Chapito, plus CJNG together. But the story gets even more interesting. La Maitza fighters showed up, fought the CJNG Chapitos alliance, and spray painted over the graffiti. This wasn't just symbolic.
Just like Cali, people hit the wall up, and then the ops come through and X them out. And then from there, it's war for sure. That's crazy. I think if El Chapo was still free, he'll be running everything right now. El Chapo's locked down. These dudes is running wild. Everybody wants to take over what El Chapo had, and it's wild, man. If El Chapo was out, these dudes would be sitting in the background working for El Chapo.
It was a real battle for control of territory and messaging. CJNG fighters were spotted just 15 kilometers from Culiacan, deep in Sinaloa territory, which would have been impossible without the alliance with Los Chapitos. But here's the brilliant part of El Mencho's strategy, and this is what makes him so dangerous. According to former DEA boss Mike Vigil, who spent decades studying Mexican cartels,
Before he tell us what makes El Mencho so dangerous, man, when you see El Mencho's face, them big old eyes like he been tooting all day and all night, man, he looked dangerous, man. He looked like a ruthless vato, man. I ain't gonna lie.
El Mencho's plan is simple but devastating. He's just going to sit there and wait until they destroy each other, and then he'll move in and take control. The strategy is absolutely perfect from a business perspective. El Mencho sends minimal support to keep Los Chapitos alive and fighting, but not enough to actually help them win decisively. This keeps both Sinaloa factions bleeding men, money, resources, and territory, while CJNG remains relatively intact. When both sides are exhausted from fighting each other, CJNG will move in and dominate the weakened territories. And it's working.
That's the strategy. You let these two cartels battle it out and wipe each other out. And once they get weak or they are wiped out, you move in and you take over everything that they had going on. That's the strategy. That's the cartel way right there.
Better than anyone could have predicted. The Sinaloa Cartel has lost over 2,000 members in the Civil War. Their territories are destabilized, their leadership is fractured, and their reputation for invincibility has been shattered. Meanwhile, CJNG is quietly expanding into new territories and strengthening their existing positions. El Mencho's patience is legendary in the cartel world. While other leaders make impulsive decisions based on emotion or immediate profit, El Mencho thinks in terms of years and decades. He's willing to wait for the perfect moment to strike, even if it means passing up short-term opportunities. This strategy also shows his understanding of human psychology. He knows that Los Chapitos are desperate and will accept help from anyone, even their former enemies. He also knows that La Maiza will see the CJNG alliance as a betrayal and will fight even harder, which will weaken both Sinaloa factions even more. While Sinaloa tears itself apart, CJNG has been making moves that nobody's talking about enough, and these moves are reshaping the entire landscape of organized crime in Mexico. They're now present in all 32 Mexican states, making them the first cartel in history to achieve this level of territorial control. The DEA confirmed in early 2026 that they're the strongest criminal organization in Mexico, surpassing even the legendary Sinaloa Cartel. Let that sink in for a moment. While everyone was focused on the dramatic Sinaloa Civil War, El Mencho was quietly building an empire that spans the entire country of Mexico. This isn't just about drug trafficking anymore. This is about creating a criminal organization that rivals the power of the Mexican government itself. The expansion hasn't been random or opportunistic. It's been systematic and strategic, targeting key areas that provide maximum benefit to CJNG's operations. They basically won the war against the Santa Rosa de Lima cartel in Guanajuato, which was one of the most violent conflicts in recent Mexican history. The Santa Rosa de Lima cartel specialized in fuel theft and extortion, but they couldn't match CJNG's resources and organization. In Michoacan, CJNG has expanded their control beyond just drug trafficking. They're involved in avocado farming, iron ore mining, and logging operations. This diversification makes them less dependent on drug revenue and gives them legitimate business fronts to launder money. They've also strengthened their position in Guerrero, which is crucial for opium poppy cultivation and heroin production. New conflicts are intensifying in Aguascalientes, Querétaro, and Tabasco, as CJNG moves into territories that were previously controlled by smaller, local criminal groups. These expansions aren't just about territory. They're about creating a network that can move drugs, money, and people across the entire country without interference from rivals. The speed of this expansion has caught law enforcement off guard. Traditional strategies for fighting cartels assume that criminal organizations are limited by geography, language, and local connections. But CJNG has proven that a well-organized and well-funded criminal enterprise can overcome these traditional limitations. What makes CJNG's expansion so successful is their business model, which is more sophisticated than anything the cartel world has seen before. Instead of just taking over territory through violence, they're offering partnerships to local criminal groups. They provide weapons, training, and access to international drug markets in exchange for loyalty and a percentage of profits. This franchise model allows CJNG to expand rapidly without having to physically occupy every territory with their own fighters. Local groups maintain day-to-day operations, while CJNG provides strategic direction and resources. It's like a criminal version of McDonald's, standardized operations with local management. The model also makes CJNG more resilient to law enforcement pressure. If authorities arrest local leaders, CJNG can quickly replace them or shift operations to other areas. The decentralized structure makes it much harder for law enforcement to disrupt the entire organization. Now let's talk about how these cartels fight, because this isn't your typical gang warfare anymore. We're talking about...
So I guess it is safe to say that CJNG has won that war between them and the Sinaloa cartel, because El Chapo is locked down. His sons are locked down. But, recently El Mencho was taken out. But with them on top and everybody else on bottom, CJNG business is gonna boom with or without El Mencho, because I'm sure there's already somebody that has taken his place. It may be his son, because I heard his right hand man lost his life as well. So this is wild, man. Maybe Sinaloa Cartel will come back strong, because I'm sure they're in the background working on their plan to wipe out the CJNG. But we gonna see, we gonna find out, man.
Military level tactics and technology that would make some national armies jealous. The evolution of cartel warfare has been rapid and terrifying, with innovations that are changing how criminal organizations operate around the world. CJNG has a dedicated drone operators unit, which sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, but is
CJNG has a whole unit of guys that just do nothing but operate the drones. Man, these dudes are like cash money. Cash money is an army, better yet a navy. And that's what I mean by that. Man, them dudes are playing on a different level. So it's going to take a lot for the Sinaloa cartel to catch up. Man, them boys, I mean, they're a whole army in themselves. Man, that's crazy, man. CJNG is working with a lot of technology and a lot of high-powered weapons. I mean, they probably can go to war with a whole nother country if they wanted to. The way it sounds, with the stuff that they're working with, they got the money.
absolutely real. Between 2021 and 2025, they carried out 42 drone attacks that killed 21 people, making them more effective with drone warfare than many terrorist organizations.
Man, that boy had a drone with bombs strapped to it. So they'll just fly that drone. Boom! That's wild, man. That's real diabolical right there. Them boys, is over there flying military drones, and they flying DJI drones with bombs, C4 and all that strapped to it. That's crazy. That's diabolical, man. It's gonna take a lot to battle them dudes.
They use FPV drones, which stands for first person view, with explosives attached that can be guided with precision to specific targets. These
Wow.
aren't toy drones you can buy at Best Buy. Situations. They're not just copying old military strategies. They're using cutting-edge warfare techniques that are still being developed by national militaries.
Wow.
The weapons and equipment used by modern cartels would make most national armies envious.
Sounds
They've
like
got armored vehicles called blindadas that are custom built to withstand rifle fire and explosions. These aren't just pickup trucks with steel plates welded on. They're professionally engineered vehicles with ballistic glass, run-flat tires, and gun ports.
Man, look
Night
at
vision
that.
equipment allows cartel fighters to operate effectively in complete darkness, giving them a huge advantage over law enforcement and
Man, them boys is working with everything our military is working with. Armored trucks, night vision, drones. Man, that's wild, man. It would take a whole army to wipe the CG or CJNG out, from what I can tell right now. Man, them boys ain't no joke, man.
rival groups that don't have the same technology. Military-grade weapons include assault rifles, machine guns, rocket-propelled grenades, and even anti-aircraft weapons in some cases. Encrypted communication systems ensure that cartel operations can't be monitored by law enforcement. These systems are often more sophisticated than what's used by local police departments.
I bet they be in them armored trucks playing that music when they on their way to tear something up. Cash money is an army, better yet a navy, because they got the cash money and they moving like an army, better yet the navy. CJNG ain't no joke, man. I don't think nobody want to play with them right now. This is wild, man. This blows my mind just to hear the type of weaponry that they're working with. That's crazy, man. Man.
Making it nearly impossible for authorities.
If you owe the CJNG some money, you better pay up. Because they coming, man. And you ain't going to get away from the way it sounds.
To intercept cartel communications. Underground tunnels represent some of the most impressive engineering projects undertaken by criminal organizations. These aren't just holes in the ground. They're sophisticated structures with ventilation systems, lighting, and rail systems for moving drugs and people. Some tunnels stretch for miles and include multiple entry and exit points. Submarines for transporting cocaine from Colombia represent the ultimate in criminal innovation. These aren't full-size military submarines, but semi-submersible vessels that can carry tons of drugs while remaining nearly invisible to radar and visual detection. Modern cartels operate more like military organizations than traditional criminal gangs. They have formal training programs, rank structures, and specialized units for different types of operations. New recruits go through boot camp-style training that includes weapons handling, tactics, and operational security. The level of organization rivals that of legitimate military forces. There are intelligence units that gather information on rivals, and law enforcement, logistics units that handle weapons and supply procurement, and financial units that manage the billions of dollars in revenue generated by cartel operations. But let's not forget the real victims here. Because while we're talking about strategy and tactics, real people are suffering and dying every single day. The innocent people caught in this war are experiencing levels of violence and terror that most of us can't even imagine. Civilians are being forced into recruitment in ways that are absolutely horrifying. Farm workers get kidnapped while working in their fields and are given a choice: join the cartel or die. Teenagers walking.
They running up on you like, get down or lay down. Them boys ain't no joke, man. And they almost sound like they can't be stopped.
Home from school are grabbed off the street and forced to become lookouts or drug runners. Entire families have fled their homes, leaving behind everything they've worked for their entire lives. The forced displacement has created a refugee crisis within Mexico that gets very little international attention. Thousands of families have abandoned their homes, businesses, and communities to escape the violence.
Oh, I'm sure.
They arrive in other cities with nothing but the clothes on their backs, trying to start over while living in constant fear that the violence will follow them. Houses get ransacked not just for valuables, but as psychological warfare. Cartels will destroy family photos, kill pets, and leave threatening messages to terrorize, destroying the livelihood.
Not the dog. They gonna kill your pet too. Man, them boys ain't got no heart, man. Them CJNG ain't showing no love, man. Not the dog. Man, they gonna wipe out everybody, including the dog too. God
Hoods of rural families who depend on livestock for survival. People just disappear, and their families never know what happened to them. The Mexican government estimates that over 100,000 people have disappeared in Mexico over the past decade, many of them victims of cartel violence. Families spend years searching for missing relatives, never knowing if they're alive or dead. In March 2025, authorities discovered something that shocked even experienced investigators who had seen decades of cartel violence. a CJNG training camp at the Izaguirre Ranch in Tuchitlan, Jalisco, contained hundreds of skeletal remains scattered across the property. Clothing, shoes, and personal belongings were everywhere, creating a scene that looked like a mass grave from a genocide. This place wasn't just a training camp. It was an execution site where CJNG killed their own recruits who defied orders, tried to desert, or were suspected of being informants. The discovery...
So just because you get down with the team don't mean you 100% safe, man. Because if they think you working with the enemy goes, or if they think you working with the policias, they taking you out. You are going to be no longer. Ain't no love in that game, man. And the CJNG definitely ain't showing no love. Heartless.
Revealed the internal brutality of cartel operations, showing that even cartel members themselves are victims of the violence. The psychological impact on investigators and local residents was severe. Many of the investigators required counseling after processing the scene. Local residents reported nightmares and anxiety attacks after learning what had been happening so close to their homes. The impact on children has been particularly devastating. Schools in conflict zones have been forced to close repeatedly due to violence. Children suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder at rates comparable to war zones. Many have witnessed executions, gun battles, or the disappearance of family members. Child recruitment by cartels has become a major problem, with organizations using children as young as 10 years old as lookouts and drug runners. These children are often from poor families who are offered money they desperately need, making it difficult for parents to refuse even when they know the dangers. Educational opportunities have been severely limited in many areas, creating a generation of children who have missed years of schooling due to violence. This creates a cycle where young people have few legitimate opportunities and become more vulnerable to cartel recruitment. Both sides use extreme violence not just to eliminate enemies, but as psychological warfare designed to terrorize entire populations. The messages sent through these acts of violence are carefully calculated to create maximum fear and demonstrate power. June 24, 2025, represents one of the most shocking examples of this psychological warfare. 2 suspected turncoats were executed, and their bodies were hung from a highway bridge in Caminero, Mocorito, Sinaloa, with narco messages attached that detailed their alleged crimes and served as warnings to others who might consider betraying their cartel. The location was chosen specifically for maximum impact. This highway bridge is used by thousands of commuters every day, ensuring that the message would be seen by as many people as possible. The bodies were left hanging for hours before authorities could safely remove them, traumatizing everyone who saw them. July 4th, 2025 brought even more horrific imagery when dismembered bodies were left on an overpass in San Blas, with heads placed on containers like some kind of grotesque display. The timing on Independence Day was intentional, designed to show that cartels have more power than the government, even on national holidays.
Sounds like it.
March 3rd, 2025, saw the body of an alleged Chapitos member hung from arches in Potrerillos del Norte, accompanied by a message that detailed the victim's supposed crimes and warned others about the consequences of opposing La Maiza. The public nature of these displays is designed to show that nowhere is safe from cartel justice. These acts of violence aren't random or impulsive. They're carefully planned communications designed to send specific messages to different audiences. For rival cartels, the message is about power and capability. For potential informants, it's about the consequences of betrayal. For the general public, it's about who really controls the territory. The level of brutality is often escalated specifically to outdo rival cartels and demonstrate superior ruthlessness. This creates a cycle where each act of violence must be more extreme than the last to have the same psychological impact. Social media has amplified the impact of these messages, with photos and videos spreading far beyond the immediate area where the violence occurred. Cartels have learned to use social media as a force multiplier, ensuring their messages reach the widest possible audience. The psychological warfare has also targeted law enforcement and government officials. Police officers have been killed, and their
Yeah, I'm quite sure the local police over there, they don't want no parts of that. So I'm sure they stay out of the cartel's way, especially the CJNG. The policiers ain't messing with them boys. They is not coming to save you.
bodies displayed with messages warning other officers not to interfere with cartel operations.
Dang.
Government officials have received death threats accompanied by photos of previous victims. This has created a climate of fear within law enforcement that makes it difficult to recruit and retain officers. Many police departments in cartel-controlled areas are severely understaffed because officers quit or refuse to take jobs in dangerous areas.
I bet a lot of them police departments, man, they probably ain't even got 10 officers, man. Them 10 officers, man, or it could be more than 10. But the policiers are probably more like some kind of security guard. Because they ain't protecting and serving nothing. They definitely ain't coming locking none of them dudes up. That's for damn sure, because they wouldn't even live. They wouldn't make it, man.
Areas. The targeting of law enforcement families has been particularly effective at intimidating officials. When cartels threaten not just officers but their wives and children, it becomes much more difficult for law enforcement to maintain their resolve. The Mexican government under President Claudia Sheinbaum has deployed military forces to conflict zones, but they're fighting an enemy that's better equipped, better funded, and more motivated than traditional military opponents. In January 2026 alone, Iniri Sisori Arions, they arrested 21 CJNG members in 10 days, but these arrests barely made a dent in the organization's operations. The challenge for the Mexican government is that they're fighting organizations that have unlimited funding, no rules of engagement, and no concern for civilian casualties. Government forces have to follow laws and procedures that cartels completely ignore, creating an inherent disadvantage in any confrontation. Military operations have had some success in disrupting cartel activities, but they've also led to increased violence as cartels fight back against government pressure. The deployment of military forces to civilian areas has created its own problems, with reports of human rights abuses and civilian casualties. The U.S. government designated both CJNG and the Sinaloa Cartel as foreign terrorist organizations in February 2025, which allows for enhanced penalties and expanded law enforcement powers. This designation puts these cartels in the same category as ISIS and Al-Qaeda, reflecting the level of threat they pose to international security. In June 2025, the U.S. Treasury sanctioned El Mencho plus 4 other CJNG leaders, freezing any assets they might have in the U.S. financial system and prohibiting American businesses from dealing with them. The $15 million bounty on El Mencho is the highest ever offered for a drug lord, exceeding even the bounty that was placed on Osama bin Laden. Between February and August 2025, Mexico extradited 55 cartel members to the U.S., including El Mencho's brother, Antonio. These extraditions represent increased cooperation between Mexican and U.S. law enforcement, but they've also led to increased violence as cartels try to prevent their members from being captured. Traditional law enforcement strategies have proven inadequate against modern cartels that operate more like military organizations than criminal gangs. Police departments designed to handle street crime are overwhelmed by organizations that have military-grade weapons and training. The corruption problem makes law enforcement efforts even more difficult. When cartel members know that police operations are being leaked by corrupt officials, it becomes nearly impossible to conduct successful raids or investigations. International cooperation has improved, but it's still limited by sovereignty issues and different legal systems. Evidence gathered in one country may not be admissible in another, and extradition processes can take years to complete. The arrest and conviction of key cartel leaders has provided insight into the scope and sophistication of these organizations, but it's also shown how resilient they are to leadership changes. Elmayo Zambada's arrest in July 2024 and guilty plea in August 2025 marked the end of an era for the Sinaloa Cartel. Zambada had been a leader of the organization for decades and was considered one of the most powerful drug lords in history. His cooperation with U.S. authorities has provided unprecedented insight into cartel operations. Joaquin Guzman Lopez's arrest in July 2024 and guilty plea in December 2025 to drug trafficking and kidnapping Elmayo revealed the depth of internal betrayal within the Sinaloa organization. His cooperation agreement with U.S. authorities likely provided information that led to other arrests and operations. Ovidio Guzman Lopez, known as El Raton, was arrested in January 2023 and pled guilty in July 2025. His arrest led to massive violence in Culiacan as his supporters tried to free him, showing the level of loyalty and organization within cartel ranks. El Chapo himself has been serving a life sentence in U.S. prison since 2019, but his influence on the organization continued through his sons until the recent civil war tore the cartel apart. El Menchito, El Mencho's son, was sentenced to life plus 30 years in March 2025 and ordered to forfeit $6 billion. This sentence represents one of the largest financial forfeitures in U.S. history and shows the massive wealth generated by cartel operations. El Gaucho, El Mencho's son-in-law, pled guilty in June 2025 to money laundering charges. His cooperation with authorities has likely provided insight into CJNG's financial operations and money laundering networks.
I doubt that.
Jose Gonzalez Valencia, El Mencho's brother-in-law, was sentenced to 30 years in June 2025. The Valencia family has been crucial to CJNG's operations, particularly in money laundering and international drug trafficking. Rosalinda, El Mencho's wife, served time and was released in February 2025.
And she probably is the one that's running the CJNG cartel right now, because somebody's got to be in control of it, because things don't just stop because certain people lose their lives or they get locked up. It's a lot of money to be made. So please believe somebody is running these cartels and things do not stop.
Her release was controversial because many believed she should have received a longer sentence given her role in cartel operations. Antonio Oseguera, El Mencho's brother, was extradited in February 2025 and is facing charges in the U.S. His extradition represents continued pressure on El Mencho's family network. Despite these high-profile arrests and convictions, both organizations have continued to operate effectively. This shows the depth of their organizational structure and the effectiveness of their succession planning. When leaders are arrested, they're quickly replaced by others who have been trained and prepared for leadership roles. The arrests have also led to increased violence as different factions fight for control of territories and operations previously controlled by arrested leaders. In some cases, the removal of experienced leaders has led to more violence and instability rather than less. This isn't just about territory or respect or even traditional drug trafficking. This war is about controlling a criminal economy that generates hundreds of billions of dollars annually and touches every aspect of society from Mexico to the United States and beyond. Both cartels are the main suppliers of fentanyl that's killing Americans at unprecedented rates. They get precursor chemicals from China, often through legitimate chemical companies that either don't know or don't care how their products are being used.
Oh, they know, but they don't care because they getting paid. They know.
These chemicals are then processed in sophisticated laboratories throughout Mexico using equipment and techniques that rival legitimate pharmaceutical operations. The profit margins on fentanyl are extraordinary. A kilogram of fentanyl that costs a few $100s to produce can be sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars on U.S. streets. The potency of fentanyl means that small amounts can be mixed with other drugs to create large quantities of product, maximizing profits while minimizing transportation risks. The fentanyl trade has also changed. Unlike cocaine or heroin, which require specific geographic conditions to produce, fentanyl can be manufactured anywhere with the right chemicals and equipment. This has made cartels less dependent on traditional drug-producing regions and more focused on controlling manufacturing and distribution networks. Both cartels have extensive operations in Colombia, working with paramilitaries and other criminal organizations to secure cocaine supplies. These relationships involve complex agreements about territory, transportation routes, and profit sharing that span multiple countries. The cocaine trade requires sophisticated logistics networks to move product from South American production areas to North American markets. This involves everything from submarines and aircraft to corrupt port officials and transportation companies. Massive methamphetamine laboratories throughout Mexico produce drugs that are distributed throughout North America. These operations require significant infrastructure, including chemical supplies, equipment, and skilled personnel to operate the laboratories safely and efficiently. The environmental impact of methamphetamine production is severe, with toxic chemicals contaminating soil and water supplies around laboratory sites. Cleanup of these sites requires specialized equipment and expertise that's often not available in rural Mexican communities. Whoever controls the major border crossings controls access to the most lucrative drug market in the world. The U.S.-Mexico border represents the gateway to a market worth hundreds of billions of dollars annually, making control of crossing points incredibly valuable. Border control isn't just about moving drugs. It's also about controlling the flow of money, weapons, and people. Cartels charge taxes to other criminal organizations that want to use their routes, creating additional revenue streams beyond their own drug trafficking operations. Major Mexican ports like Manzanillo, Veracruz, and Lázaro Cárdenas are worth billions in revenue because they control the flow of drugs and precursor chemicals into Mexico. Control of these ports allows cartels to dictate terms to suppliers and competitors while maintaining operational security. Port operations also provide opportunities for money laundering through legitimate shipping companies and import-export businesses. The volume of legitimate trade through these ports makes it easier to hide illegal shipments among legal cargo. Smuggling migrants from Central America through Mexico to the U.S. has become almost as profitable as drug trafficking. Cartels charge thousands of dollars per person and often force migrants to carry drugs as payment for passage. The human trafficking operations have created additional revenue streams while also providing cover for drug trafficking operations. Mixed groups of migrants and drug smugglers make it more difficult for law enforcement to identify and intercept drug shipments. Side businesses like extortion and fuel theft provide steady revenue streams that help fund cartel operations during periods when drug trafficking is disrupted by law enforcement. These operations also help cartels maintain control over local populations and businesses. Fuel theft has become particularly lucrative, with cartels tapping into pipelines and stealing millions of dollars worth of gasoline and diesel fuel. This fuel is then sold on the black market at reduced prices, undercutting legitimate businesses while generating significant profits. As of February 2026, CJNG is expanding territory and present in all 32 Mexican states, making them the most geographically extensive criminal organization in Mexican history. They're considered either number one or tied with Sinaloa as the most powerful cartel, depending on how you measure power and influence. But here's the thing that makes this situation so complex. The Sinaloa cartel isn't dead or even defeated. It's fragmented into multiple organizations that are still extremely powerful and dangerous. Los Chapitos faction, La Mayiza faction, and various splinter groups are all operating independently, while sometimes cooperating and sometimes fighting each other. This fragmentation has actually made the situation more dangerous in some ways because there are now more independent criminal organizations operating without the restraint that came from centralized leadership, are now inadequate for dealing with multiple independent organizations that operate differently and have different priorities. The fragmentation has made it more difficult to predict cartel behavior and develop effective countermeasures. The impact on Mexican society has been severe, with violence spreading to areas that were previously relatively peaceful. The breakdown of centralized cartel control has led to increased competition for territory and resources, resulting in more frequent and more brutal conflicts. The CJNG versus Sinaloa War represents the biggest cartel conflict in Mexican history, and its impact extends far beyond Mexico's borders. This conflict is responsible for tens of thousands of deaths, the destabilization of entire regions of Mexico, the fueling of the fentanyl crisis in the United States, and the evolution of criminal organizations into military-style forces that rival the power of national governments. El Mencho has become El Chapo's son's worst nightmare, not just because of his military capabilities or territorial control, but because of his strategic intelligence and patience. While they tear each other apart in emotional conflicts driven by revenge and pride, he's building an empire based on careful planning and long-term thinking.
Not no more. Not since they, well, I ain't gonna say they wiped him out because I heard different stories on how he lost his life, but El Mencho is no longer.
Transformation of CJNG from a Sinaloa subsidiary to the most powerful criminal organization in Mexico shows how quickly the balance of power can shift in the criminal world. El Mencho's rise demonstrates that in the modern cartel landscape, intelligence and strategy are more important than traditional measures of power like violence and intimidation. But here's the tragic truth that we can't ignore. Entire communities have been destroyed, families have been torn apart, and a generation of children is growing up in a world where violence is normal and safety is never guaranteed. This war shows us that the drug trade isn't just about drugs anymore. It's about power, territory, and control on a scale that rivals actual countries. These organizations have budgets larger than many national governments, military capabilities that exceed those of some armies, and influence that extends into every level of society.
Man, my mind is blown. The things that I just learned in this video is just, it's diabolical. But El Chapo and his sons are locked down. So I think it's kind of safe to say that the Sinaloa cartel, I mean, they kind of fell off. I'm sure they're still doing something, but for the most part, they fell off. And El Mencho lost his life recently. But I'm pretty sure with all the business and all the money that they had going on and that they made, somebody else is making sure that things continue on. You know, I'm sure it's business as usual. They did their mourning, they sent them off, and now it's back to business for the CJNG cartel. It's wild, man, but it's big business, and they're not gonna miss out I'm making money. Let me know what you think down in the comments about this. Like this video, share this video, and subscribe to the channel.